Hello everybody and welcome to this, my first of 3 videos on the Canon EOS Rebel T3i, also called the 600D and the KISS X5, those latter 2 names being outside of North America and Japan respectively. The EOS Rebel T3i is an APS-C interchangeable lens DSLR. What does that mean? APS-C means that's the sensor size in here. It has an APS-C sized format. Canon is a 1.6 crop factor versus full frame, so if you see something that says a 50mm full frame lens, it's actually functioning like about an 80mm with the APS-C. It's just a slightly smaller sensor. Okay, that's what that means on the APS-C. Interchangeable lens means that you can take the lens off of the camera at any time when you're not taking a photo, and put another one on. There you go. While we have the lens off, I will do something you should never, ever do, and I'll show you the size of the shutter by by lifting up this mirror, and you might be able to see in there the shutter curtains. Those shutter curtains are the size of your shutter. This uses an 18 megapixel CMOS sensor. What that means is that CMOS is the sensor type. There are 2 types of digital sensors out that have been used in digital cameras, CCD and CMOS. CCD were older, CMOS are newer, so this uses a CMOS type sensor. 18 megapixels is the image resolution. The meter on this is a 63 zone meter with evaluative, 4% spot, 9% partial, and center weighted metering modes, and throughout the course of this video, we're going to talk about how to use all of those. But the general mode you're mostly going to use is probably going to be evaluative. And the way that works is if you imagine what you're seeing right now is what you're looking at through your camera's viewfinder, then this camera divides that area into 63 zones. I don't actually have a map of what that looks like, but there will be 63 different zones. The camera's computer takes data from all of those 63 different zones and then uses that to figure out what the exposure should be for your image. The shutter speeds are 1/4000th on the fast side to 30 seconds on the long side with bulb. Bulb means that when you push the shutter button down, the shutter opens. When you release it, the shutter closes. And it has a 3.7 frame per second burst speed. So if you're in continuous mode and you hold the shutter button down, 3.7 frames per second until you run out of buffer. The viewfinder, which is this right back here, has a 0.87% magnification with 95% frame coverage. All right, what does that mean? Imagine that what you're looking at right now is what you're looking at is what's going to be on your sensor. Okay, this is the image you're going to take. What you see in your viewfinder is 87% of the size of what's going to reach your sensor. What you're looking at right now, the 95% frame coverage, means that about 2.5% on each side and about 2.5% on the top and bottom will be on your sensor, but not in the viewfinder. The use of that is that if you are slightly crooked with your image, you can crop just a little bit to get your image in line. So when you fill up your frame, you still have a little bit of room to tweak your image in post in terms of the alignment. The camera's ISO or sensitivity range is 100 to 12,800, as well as an auto ISO mode. The flash sync speed is 1/200th of a second, and this can record video at 1080p 24 frames per second. The Canon EOS Rebel T3i was targeted at the entry-level user market. Now, we know that because of the Rebel badge. Also in Japan, it was called the KISS. The KISS is the entry-level range in Japan. And it was a 300-digit camera, and the 300 and 400-digit numbers outside of North America are the entry-level Canons. It was made by Canon in Japan. Is that correct? Yeah. Oh, in Taiwan, I'm sorry. In 2011. It was preceded by the Rebel T3i, which is also called the KISS X4 and the 550D, and it was followed by the Rebel T4i, which is also called the KISS X6i and the 650D. Now, as we do if you have your Canon EOS Rebel T3i, we're going to go through the camera's features and talk about what all of them are. In the second video, we're going to talk about what all of them do. On the top here, these 2 bars on the side are called your strap bars, and these allow you to connect a camera strap either directly by connecting the camera strap here or with a split ring, whichever works best for you. This is your sensor plane indicator, and this indicates exactly where your sensor plane is at. So if you have to do some, say, microscopy, that's the best example I can ever think of, you can take a measurement off of here and use this to know your exact distance to your subject. Pop-up flash, hot shoe, This little white line is your mode dial index, which tells you which shooting mode you're in. And in the second video, we're going to talk about every single mode on this dial, so you know what all of them do and how to use them. On-off button, asterisk and autofocus button symbols right here on the top, display button, ISO selection button, command wheel, and your shutter button right up here. On the front of the camera, we have a number of different things. Here we have the infrared port. This is your autofocus assist light and also your self-timer countdown light. So if you're in a dim setting and you need your autofocus needs more light, this will illuminate. If you're using your self-timer, this, I believe this flashes. I'm 99.9% sure about that. Lens mount, EF index and EFS index. So this camera can take both the full frame EF lenses and the EFS APS-C lenses. Here, of course, you have your mirror and your electronic contacts. This is your lens locking pin and your lens release lock button right here, which all this really does is retract the pin so you can remove your lens. Here on this side of the front is your flash pop-up button. This is your depth of field preview button down here. Make, model, and badge. And this is a microphone for on-camera audio when you're making a video. On the back of the camera, we have a few things. First thing I'm going to do is pop out the LCD screen so you can see the pop-out LCD right here. This is the menu button and the info button, your viewfinder. This is your diopter adjuster right here. So what you can do is you can adjust your diopter with this. The way that you adjust your diopter, the easiest way, is you look through your viewfinder and you focus your lens, manually focus it, turn off the AF, and you manually focus on it as close as you can. Close is usually pretty easy because you can control it. If you have something like a binder clip, you just put a pencil in that binder clip, clip it onto here, have the pencil resting upright, and then you focus manually on the tip of the pencil. It helps if you have a tripod or someplace to rest your camera, by the way. So you focus manually on the tip of the pencil, slide it in and out as you need to, and then when you have it in focus, you take a photo. And then you compare what you have in your photo with what you're seeing in your viewfinder to know whether or not your viewfinder is properly in focus. So if it's not, just adjust your diopter and try again. So the diopter goes from, I don't have it written down, but usually it's about +1 to -1, somewhere in that range, with neutral being in the middle there. And so what you can do is just adjust your diopter so that if you have a minor glasses prescription, you can take off your glasses and use your viewfinder. This is your movie mode button right here. It's also your live view, so this is double function live view and movie mode. Here's the asterisk button. Here's the autofocus point selection button. We talked about the LCD screen. This is your AV button, your aperture value button, and this comes in important to play when we are doing things like shifting the exposure. We'll see that in the second video, or using manual exposure mode. Again, second video. This is the Q button. White balance button allows you to select different white balances. This is your drive mode button, which allows you to select different drive modes. Your picture style button, so you can adjust the way that your JPEG images look when you record them. Your autofocus mode select button, which allows you to change your autofocus mode. This is the set button, which basically is like a general purpose OK, playback, delete, SD card access lamp. So if this light is flashing, it means your camera is writing to the SD card. On this side of the camera, we have the SD card port. You access it by pushing this little door out and lifting it open, and that's where you can insert the SD card. We'll talk more about the SD card in the second video, so you can know exactly what you need to get. On this side of the camera, we have a bunch of different ports. This one right here is going to be for your remote control and an off-camera mic. So on the top, you can plug in a remote control that will allow you to do things like take bulb or time exposures without actually touching the camera. That's very useful for things like star trails and macro photos where you don't want to have any shake from your finger pushing the shutter button. A microphone for recording audio so that you can have the mic coming here and not have to rely on the microphone that's built into the camera. This port right here has your HDMI out on the bottom. So what this allows you to do is connect the camera to something like a TV screen to playback videos and photos if you would like to. And then this is your auto video out digital. So this is a digital AV out that would allow you to do a similar thing with it looks like a micro USB connection as opposed to HDMI. When this video came out, HDMI was kind of a new thing, a new port to include on cameras. I'm not sure if this was the first EOS Rebel that included that or not. On the camera's bottom, we have a few different things to see. Here is the tripod socket, so you can connect the camera to a tripod and get stable, long exposures. Here's the maker information: made in Taiwan by Canon, serial number, and some of the certification stamps. And then if we lift up this door right here, this is the battery chamber. We can get to the battery. We'll talk more about the battery at the very beginning of the second video. But before we get to the second video, I have some tips for the camera, the EOS T3i, that you can use to make the most of your time with this camera. The first one is use EFS lenses. This is an EFS lens. There are a couple of really easy ways to tell if a lens is EFS. It's going to say EFS on it, just like this one does. And also, EFS lenses have a white mounting square instead of a red mounting circle. EFS lenses are very good. They tend to be very sharp and very small and compact and quiet, and they also are generally less expensive, because the only cameras that that I know of anyway, that can use EFS lenses are the APS-C format Canon DSLRs. So there's a little bit less demand for these than there would be for, say, an EF lens, which can go onto any of the Canon DSLRs, anything with an adapter that goes to EF mount, as well as some of the Canon EF mount cinema cameras that use the EF mount. Also, for the sensor on this, 18 megapixels is very capable for still images. So even today in 2023, as I record this 12 years after this camera was made, the 18 megapixel sensor holds up for printing still images. The 1080p video, however, by today's standards in 2023, is lacking in size and also in frame rate, just a little bit. That said, if you're filming only for social medias, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, whatever it is, if you're filming something that is primarily going to be viewed on a cell phone screen, 1080p is absolutely just fine for that, and this camera would be fantastic for recording video for social media sharing. Some things not to do with your camera. Don't store your some things not to do with your camera. When you have the lens off, don't touch the mirror, because your finger oils can cause it to be desilvered, which can affect things like your autofocus, because the autofocus sensor is behind the mirror. And also your finger oils can tarnish it, which can affect your ability to use the viewfinder and your camera's ability to give you a proper meter reading. Don't touch the shutter curtains, because your finger oils, again, or your finger pressure itself can jam those shutter curtains and damage it. And don't touch the sensor, because touching the sensor, again, your finger oils can get onto it. Very, very hard to remove finger oils from camera sensors. Don't leave your camera or lenses in a plastic bag or box, because plastic's moisture permeable, and once water or moisture gets into that plastic container, it's a lot harder for it to get out, and it can cause fungus to grow on your optics, which is very bad for your image quality. If you do want to keep these in a plastic bag or box, and now, full disclosure, I do keep a lot of my cameras in Pelican cases. What you want to do is get some rechargeable desiccant packs that have a color changing indicator when they're done, and then just keep them recharged, and then that will allow you to safely store your cameras inside of a plastic box. It doesn't have to be a Pelican box. It can literally be like one of those plastic organizer boxes that you can get at any dollar store or whatever. Just keep a desiccant pack in there to protect your gear. It's about $3 to $5 for a pack, and it's a whole lot cheaper to buy and recharge a desiccant pack than replace a camera or lens that's been ruined by fungus. The last thing is, don't leave your camera or lenses in your car. There's a number of different reasons for this. A big one is heat damage. If your camera gear gets too hot, like being left in a car in the sun, then the lubricating oils can get into places they shouldn't be, like the aperture leaves or mechanical components here. And then when they return to their normal viscosity, because they've gotten thin in the heat, and then when they get back to normal, they can cause things not to work properly. In the cold, then those lubricating oils, even if they're just fine beforehand, can become thick and gummy if they break down. So also don't leave these in your car over the winter. And the last thing, of course, is that a camera will always be a theft target. So even if you're just going to hop into the grocery store to pick up a bottle of water after a long hike with your camera, don't leave it in your car, because it's never fun to come out to a car and find a broken window and no camera. Another thing is, don't let your camera get wet. I do believe that these have some weather sealing but it's not like around some of the ports and stuff, but they're not fully weather sealed. So water getting into your camera could be damaging to the circuits and could ruin it. So don't let that happen. Definitely don't stick it underwater or go running through like a fountain or sprinkler with it. And the last thing is just remember that your Canon EOS T3i is a precision tool that should be handled with care and respect. And as long as you take care of your camera will take care of you. So that's it for the camera's layout. In the next video, we're going to talk about everything, all of how you can do everything on this camera except the menus. The menus we're going to talk about in the third video, and I'll explain what all of the different menu functions do. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in those 2 videos.